So the title of my talk is Prompt Engineering for ChatGPT Use, Tips and Hacks. And I would like to kind of walk you through these slides. And hopefully I'll give you some tips and hacks to apply it if you're planning on using ChatGPT, or if you already are using ChatGPT, to help you with your everyday tasks, either at work or whatever. But there are some things that might be helpful in knowing about prompt engineering. So first of all, the definition of prompt engineering. What I did, I just asked ChatGPT to give me a definition because I want to understand what ChatGPT thinks of prompt engineering. So what is prompt engineering according to ChatGPT? It is a technique employed to elicit more specific, accurate, or context-appropriate responses from a language model like GPT-4. Essentially, it's a way to optimize the way questions or commands are framed in order to get the best possible output from the model. This process can be both an art and a science, as it may involve understanding the capabilities, limitations of the model, as well as using systematic approach to refine prompts. That's a really good definition. Now, I've been looking at different studies out there about prompt engineering. As I mentioned, it's a growing field of science. Actually, there's a lot of studies out there. The more the advanced the AI is, the chatbot is, the more information about how we deal with it and how we get it to do our task. So I just picked a few definitions that I thought they were interesting and that might help understand what prompt engineering is. So MESCO 2023 defined prompt engineering as a new field of research that refers to a practice of designing, refining prompts or instructions. It's essentially the practice of effectively interacting with AI systems to optimize their benefits. Now, Lowe 2023, I liked I like their definition. So it says it's the art of fine-tuning the questions or commands provided to AI models in order to optimize their performance and guarantee to give the best results. Ikeen 2023 defined it as the process of designing, refining, and optimizing input to effectively communicate the user's intent to a language model like GPT. So they're all the same core, but you kind of need to think about it as a way to effectively enhance our interaction with the AI. It's an art, fine-tuning the questions. And it's a process to kind of get that gap between the user's questions to the AI output. So the impact of effective prompt engineering on performance, basically think about it as maximizing the effectiveness to bridge the gap between the user's intent and the model understanding, right? That's the whole idea, to kind of get that gap closer and smaller. Now, a well-engineered prompt will give you better quality output. However, a poorly crafted one, well, it's going to give you an unsatisfactory, erroneous response. So it's actually not the AI's fault when you don't get the result that you want. Mostly, it's the way you worded it or the way the prompt is done. And by employing certain techniques, tips, and best practices, you can actually get more accurate, relative, and creative results from the AI model. Now, as I mentioned, for this presentation, I looked at several studies, and I picked a few to kind of talk about. And one I really liked. It was plain and simple. It was very approachable, and it talked about prompt engineering for medical professionals. So how to improve prompt engineering? First of all, I guess basic tips is that you need to understand the underlying principles of how AI and machine learning model work, just to give you a better idea. Also, try to familiarize yourself what LLMs are, especially the ones that you're working with, and understand their capabilities and limitations. And finally, practice makes perfect, right? The more you practice it, it's still new, it's growing, it's new to a lot of people. So the more you interact with it, the more you're going to learn from that, like everything else. Now, diving into specific recommendations that you can actually apply when interacting with ChatGPT. Uh, First, an important one is that be as specific as possible when you're writing a prompt. When you're wanting to write something, don't think about it as a Google search box where you just write your question and you just expect a result or an answer. The more specific you are about your question, the better the reply you're going to get. As an example, let's just say, I want to understand something about heart disease. So I can say, tell me about heart disease. Very vague, very short. It will give you an answer. Also, it's going to be a vague general reply. However, let's just say if I was more specific, I would say, what are the most common risk factors for coronary artery disease? This is where it's going to give you a better specific reply. So remember always, whenever you want to ask something, the more specific you are in your questions, the more details it is in your prompt, the better the reply is. Another thing, keep in mind, describe the setting and provide the context around your question. Again, don't just consider it as a Google search box where you just write your question. The more context you give, the more background, the better. Imagine it's like you wanting to talk to a person and you want them to understand the background of the topic before you dive into questions. So usually you go in, so you understand this is the situation, this is the background, blah, 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 and then I want to understand. So this is where you need to kind of think about it when you want to dive in and prompt something from the chatbot. So the more description you have about the context, background of the topic, and then have your question, the better the reply will be. Now, experiment with different prompt styles because there's no one right way of asking something, right? It depends on the question, it depends on you, it depends on a lot of stuff. And it's just a trial and error. You experiment and you see what the best result you can get. As an example, let's say I want to know symptoms about a disease. I can just say a very specific, direct questions. What are the symptoms? Now, sometimes if I wanted to see if there's a different response, I'm like, list all the potential symptoms. So it gives me a list. Or I would say, summarize the key symptoms and progression. Or I want to ask about the process. How can you give me a step-by-step process of diagnosis and symptoms of a certain disease? The way you ask a question, the output might be different in a way. And this is where you would judge if the reply is sufficient or not. And then think about it. It's not a one-time thing. When you get a reply, you can also, depending on the reply, fine-tuning it again. It's like, okay, well, now I want to know more about this. Well, you told me this. This is where I want to kind of maybe look at it from this angle. So it's just different styles of prompting. This is where you're going to be like trying and then see what works for you. Identify the overall goal of the prompt first. Before you start, what is the goal of your prompt? Is it general? Is it specific? It could be just about, I just want to get ideas about a certain project, task, whatever. Or it could be, I actually have a specific questions that I want. Or I want to know something more about an advanced topic. Or maybe I just want to know examples about something. So to understand what you want first, what's the goal, and then this is where you start putting it in your prompt. And I try this actually. Sometimes if I'm a bit lost and I don't really know how or what to do, I would just ask it, this is what I want. Can you just give me examples or ideas? An example that I would urge people to do, let's just say, you don't really know anything, something on how to present a specific project, for example. So you would say, can you list, certain ideas for a presentation? And then you could give more details at a scientific event to make my research findings more easily understandable to the audience. Maybe give information about the audience, maybe give information about the presentation, whatever. But it would give you more ideas and kind of make you think about, okay, well, what do I want to know more? And if I want to dive in more into a specific idea or not. Another tip really is helpful is ask it to play role. So you can help streamline the process by obtaining the information if you ask the GPT to act as in a certain role. And it provides you step by step according to that role. As an example, I can say, I want you now to act as a data scientist and explain to me blah, blah, blah. Or I want you to act as my nutritionist, for example. Or I want you to act as a research assistant in doing the following task. So whatever it is, it actually helps if you guide it on what perspective it kind of needs to look at the information and presents it to you. Now, actually, ChatGPT went a step further, and then they introduced something called the GPT Builder. And I will talk about it at the end of this lecture just to give you more information on how you can use it. Now, iterate and refine your prompts. Because prompt engineering are advanced and LLMs change so fast, every day there's something new. This is where you need to keep an eye. This is where you need to understand how your prompts might change according to the change in the LLMs. As an example, before July 2023, when ChatGPT came out, it only was limited to information before September 2021. But then after July, it just could cruise the web and there was no limit on the access anymore, right? Before in the beginning, it had the capability of doing basic statistic analysis. Now it actually has a feature of advanced statistical analysis. So the more you understand the advancement and the changes in LLMs, this is where you need to adjust your prompts and refine it to kind of get the better output and reply. Another tip is use the threads. Now, for people who know or use ChatGPT, they will understand what threads are. For people who don't, when you have a GPT account and you're asking different things for the ChatGPT, every time you start a new chat, the chat is automatically saved on the left. Now, you have the option, by the way, to keep it saved or delete it. It's up to you. But these threads are on the left side of the screen. Now, these threads could be helpful because if you're working on a project or it's like your prompt has been long or you're having a really good discussion back and forth and you don't want to lose it, and you want to, instead of explaining all the things all over again in a new chat, you can simply go back to that thread and carry on that conversation, making that the GPT follow the previous prompts or discussions or whatnot in the following prompts. So it's going to save you a lot of time and headache rather than every time going and explaining everything all over again, the prompts all over again, and the discussion all over again. So make use of the threads that you have if you keep on, you plan on continuing that conversation. Another thing is ask open-ended questions. Like everything else, open-ended questions is always better than closed-ended questions. When you ask open-ended questions to the chatbot, the better replies you get, and you never know what kind of replies you get that's going to guide you to more questions or gives you more ideas about what you need to do. So it's always a good option to start with that, and do not limit the chatbot with an answer. Just let it give you more and more details, and then you can go from there. Also, a really good tip is request examples. Sometimes if I want to know more about something, I could say, can you give me examples of this, this, this? Or not even that. Let's just say I don't know how to do something. I'm like, I kind of want to do this, but I'm not sure how to do it. Can you give me examples on how to do it? Or I can ask simply, can you give me examples of a situation of this and this topic, and how would it be presented? So just keep that in mind. You can literally ask it for examples on whatever topic, question, or you have in mind. And then depending on that, it might spark new ideas in your head to kind of go forward with it. Temporal awareness. Temporal awareness, it might not be applicable in all situations. However, if it is applicable in your situation or your inquiry, make sure to apply it in your prompt, because it will help the output be more specific and better to your question or your prompt. As an example, you can just say, without time reference, describe the healing process when having knee surgery, right? It will give you a reply according to that. However, if you want the reply to be better, you would ask, with a time reference, what can a patient typically expect during the first 6 weeks of healing after knee surgery? So this is where you specify duration, specify a timeline, and then ask your prompt. So the output is going to be a lot better in this case than the first case. Now, there's something called use the one-shot, few-shot prompting method. It's basically whenever you want to ask something, a question, if you want to give it an example to guide it, it's better to give it more examples than one. The output will actually be more better and more diversified. As an example, let's just say, I'm looking for, generate 10 possible names for a new digital device. A name I like is blah, right? It will, according to that name, give you kind of derivatives of that name, maybe something from their end, but it won't be as diversified. If you give more examples of names that you like, the output is going to be more general and better according to these examples. Finally, it's very basic, very simple, but very important. Do not take light of it. Prompt from prompt, which means that the easiest way sometimes, if you don't really know how to ask it or what to do, just ask ChatGPT, how can I ask you for a prompt to do this specific task? It's very simple, and it will give you examples on how to ask it to do a specific task. Like that's how it is. I will say, the more I dived into this and learned more about it, they talk about something to always keep in mind when you're doing prompting is that what is the goal of your question? What perspective should the chatbot take in replying to your question? What is the audience who will get this response? And what direction or task you want the ChatGPT to take and to do for you. So as long as you keep those in mind while making your prompt and these tips that I mentioned, the better the reply you're going to get. Now, another really nice article that I came by, it's by Lowe 2023. What he did is that he made up a framework for people to follow when they're prompting with ChatGPT. And basically, the CLEAR framework is just it's a really nice read. It talks about it's a comprehensive guide for maximizing the potential of AI content in academia. And it talks about 5 essential components when you're prompting. First of all, concise. Be concise and clear in your prompts. Logical. The more structured and coherent your prompts, the better the output is. Be explicit. Clear output specifications, what you need exactly. Adaptive. The flexible and customize the prompt, the better the output will be. And finally, reflective. Always evaluate and improve your prompts according to the change of the LLMs, as I mentioned. So keep those 5 concepts in mind when you're prompting. As I mentioned, it's a really nice, easy read. There's another one I kind of also came across, talks about AI and prompt engineering. But one good thing about this article, it has a nice table. If you want to know more about prompting or you want to kind of look at different examples on how to do it, it gives you a nice table of resources, the description of these resources and links. So a lot of these resources that I actually looked at were helpful. Some of them by OpenAI, professional bodies, and other by just people who use the chatbot and put their prompting for other people to kind of get used to. And you're talking about prompting in education, sports, health, business, etc. So it's actually good if you don't really know or you want to diversify, you want to know more about about how to prompt, just to look at it and see how people do their prompts. It might spark something in you when you're interacting with a chatbot. Other examples that I have here is just different guides. I do have references at the end if you're interested in looking more into it, but they're all good articles that I read and they have good information on how to deal with it and kind of teach you more about prompting with AIs. Now, one thing also, if you're kind of new and you don't really know what to do, and it's a very new field for you and all that kind of stuff, it's a bit confusing. I recommend taking this free online course. It's through Coursera, which is a platform that gives online courses. This course is Prompt Engineering for ChatGPT. It's for beginners. Really easy, simple. I took it. It just kind of gets you started, I guess, or it gets prompt engineering more familiar to you. You can just register online and just check it out if you're interested. Now, my final thing is I wanted to talk about the GPTs. As I mentioned, one of the tips I talked about was ask GPT to play a specific role, act as a data scientist, act as my nutritionist, etc. So OpenAI, the people who created ChatGPT, took that a step further and introducing GPTs in a way that now you can actually build your own ChatGPT and tailor it to specific recommendations and instructions only to what you want. And to make it more better, you do not need to have any coding experience whatsoever. All you need to do is follow simple steps that the ChatGPT will provide you to build your own GPT. So I'm just going to kind of show you how that works. So for people who have ChatGPT, this is how you kind of it looks like when you log in. For people who don't, once you create an account, you log in. The first thing that will show up is this way on right here. You're going to have, how can I help you? Have maybe different ways on how to start the conversation. Now, the box here, as you can see, how to attach a document, you write your prompt, and then this is where you send. This is where I use ChatGPT 4, which is the paid subscription one. Then 3.5 is the free one, and then you have the plugin store. The GPT-4 one is the paid one, but it has more capabilities, advanced in statistical analysis. It has DALL-E in it, and other features as well. Now, on the left here, this is where the threads, as I mentioned, you have like whenever you give a conversation, you start a chat, it will be automatically saved here on the left. And this is where you can go back to that chat and continue that conversation rather than starting a new one. Now, just to start with GPT, you go to Explore. And if you see here, this is where you they have already GPTs built for you to help you start to give you examples. So they have GPTs specifically for data analysis, game time, negotiator, let's just say, and laundry, chef, whatever. So they have specific ones built to get you started for specific tasks. And this is where you create your GPT. Just click on the plus sign right here. And then it will will bring you to a page where on the left, this is where you'll start creating your GPT by answering the questions. Very simple. All you need to do is just answer the question that the GPT gives you, and according to your answers, it will help you build a GPT. And this is where it's a create. So it's just your answer, same thing. There's a box at the bottom there that talks about, this is where you put your answer according to the question that the GPT asks you. If you want to attach any documents, you can put more examples of what you want, and then just hit send. And I said it's a conversation. So on the left is a preview of your GPT. As it builds it, you're going to see the progress. Now, when it ask you the question, it automatically starts to fill this information, the configure button here. Now, you have two options. Either you can just keep answering the questions and then later on go to the configure. It's going to populate whatever are your answers into the configure button, or you can just go directly to the configure button and start filling that information. One thing I would recommend is that I want to say is that you have the name of your GPT, what is it for? Now, the instructions are really important to tailor your GPT to something specific you want. Now, it has up to 8,000 characters. The more specific you are in your instructions, the better. What I would also recommend, if you don't really know how to do the instructions, go to one of the GPT's examples that I showed you, like the laundry one, the chef one, the game one, and ask it when you open it, ask it what kind of instructions are built into you. And according to these instructions, you would copy and paste and adjust it according to what you like. Now, you also can upload files. You can upload up to 10 files here, not more so far. And these files, let's just say if you wanted to give it examples or give it more information or whatever you want to train it on, these are where you kind of upload the file. And then the capabilities, web browsing, DALL-E image, code interpreter, I would recommend ticking all three boxes. Now, the action button here at the end, it's if you want it more specific and more efficient, this is where you would add more codes to it. It's not necessary to build a GPT. It's recommended if you actually have that capability. If not, there's no big deal, carry on. But if you do have, or someone who has a bit of coding and you want to put some codes into it, you can, just to make it more efficient. And this is where it's going to show. Yep. So as I mentioned, you start with the Explore button. Now, these are the threads. I also want to show you, if you go to your account and you go to, this is where you get your plan, my GPTs, the custom instructions. Now, the custom instructions, I really want to mention this. With your GPT, I would recommend everyone to do that, to go to custom instructions. And if you look at the first question, it says, what would you like GPT to know about you to provide a better reply? I would recommend you giving your expertise and knowledge, because it will tailor the response to your questions according to your expertise, and that's better. Also, the second question is, how would you like GPT to reply? You can tell it, I would like to reply according to my research expertise and experiences. And again, if you want to remind it, I would say, I want your answers to be professional, professional language. I would also recommend to say that, I would like it to be neutral, your reply. And if you're going to give any and more detailed, give details and examples unless specified otherwise. And then if you want to give any opinion of your own, make sure to say that it is your opinion, it's not part of the reply. And this is where, because you will find that ChatGPT will give you its own opinion on the prompt or on the reply after it gives you the information. So it's actually good to make a note of it. You can tell me your opinion, but make sure to tell me it's your opinion. So these are good things to kind of keep in mind when you're doing it. Yeah, as I mentioned right here, and this is where you kind of save. Another thing, if you go to settings, you have your basic settings for the chatbot. You can play around with it. If you go to beta features, plugins, advanced data analysis, I always take them on to come on. Chat history, do I want it or not want it? And basically what they're saying is that, are you okay with leaving that for the model to train on? If not, you can just click that off, and within 30 days, it'll be deleted. And then this is where the builder profile. So when you build your GPT, this is where it shows. And you can actually make it public. If you have a link to that builder, you can make it public for other people to access. So yeah, it's up to you. If not, you don't have to do that. And finally, I'm just saying, there's a lot of information out there on the prompt engineering. I would recommend you to keep an up-to-date on the capabilities of the LLMs that you're working with and ways to improve the prompt. Again, it's not as simple as me asking a question. It's actually an art. It's a science that's evolving with the evolvement of the LLM. So try to kind of stay in touch with that and what's new and what they're capable of. So these are my references. If you're interested in looking more into what I talked about or more information, feel free to reach out and let me know. And thank you.